Founders today on this 221st anniversary of the birth of our Constitution, for giving us in this country the most perfect document ever crafted by the hand of man that has successfully guided this country for so many years despite the assaults on it every day. So I don't believe in constitutional conventions. We had a couple of our representatives from Tea Party Patriots go and sit in a panel at Harvard to hear what was going on. And although the Founding Fathers put that provision in the Constitution, James Madison strongly urged against it. Because once you open up Pandora's box, then what happens, happens. It can be on one issue like Obamacare, it can be on something else. But once you have a constitutional convention, it's the winds that determine what happens. And this country is run by laws, not of men, and it should be run by principle, not polls. So I thank you for inviting me here on this day, because this day means a lot to me. I get questions all the time about the Tea Party movement, what it is, how it started, who comprises it. But like a lady I spent an hour and a half on the phone with, and I told Brandy and Mike earlier this evening, she called me out of the blue from Hammond, Indiana, about 2 weeks ago Sunday, when Andre Carson made his famous rant about the tree and connecting Tea Party people to racists again. She lives in Hammond, so she's not in his 7th district, but she heard what he said. She agreed with it, being a black woman. So I always take calls, especially when I see on the TV corner it says it's unavailable as far as an identification of what the number is. I answer the phone. I let her have her say for about an hour and a half, or actually she was done about half an hour. After that we had a nice discussion, two-way, instead of how it started out. And at the end of it I thanked her for her courage for calling, because she found my name as Tea Party Patriots State Coordinator for Indiana on the website and my phone number. And she called because there was something in the back of her mind that told her that all of what Andre Carson and Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and all the race baiters out there weren't telling her the complete truth. And all it takes is a seed of doubt for somebody to ask some intelligent questions. So I spent the time explaining what the Tea Party was, and I ended up inviting her to a new Tea Party that I just approved for the site back in March, Northern Indiana Patriots, which is up around Lakeland County, northwest corner of the state. And since that's pretty close to her neck of the woods, I invited her to contact the two ladies that started the Tea Party up there and go to a Tea Party meeting. And I asked her, are you going to believe your eyes or what somebody tells you? If she had never met a Tea Party person or a member, never been at an event or a meeting, then how can she put together any kind of perception of what the movement's about, or who you people are? So hopefully she'll go. Hopefully she'll ask a second question, a third and a fourth, because that's what we have to do. Always ask questions. Basically, the struggle we face today is divided into two camps. You've got those who fear losing the status quo in Washington, D.C., which are the establishment, the elite groups, leaders in both parties, by the way. And on the other hand, you have those who fear losing the future, who are conservative activist citizens like those in this room, all of you, those who comprise the Tea Party movement. It's a stark contrast. What we witnessed in the halls of Congress during the famous debt ceiling debate, which Jim Wallace alluded to earlier, which was completely unnecessary, by the way. Tea Party Patriots was the only national Tea Party organization that stood on the ground that there should have been no debt ceiling increase whatsoever. On our Monday night webinars I usually have an hour phone call at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 o'clock yours, where I'm talking to roughly 55 or 60 other state coordinators coast to coast. Rick Crane in Nevada, Don Wildman in California, Debbie Dooley in Atlanta, Kathy Johnson in Maine. and we talk about things and toss issues around and what our stand should be. Then right after that's over, at 8 o'clock p.m., 9 o'clock your time, we have a webinar that usually goes on for an hour and a half, sometimes 2, where there are local coordinators, like from this group, that discuss things over the phone based on what the state coordinators bring up to the surface in our conference call. Then Jenny Beth Martin puts the polls up after we finish on a topic like Agenda 21, which is good. We're putting a full court press on. Healthcare, cap and trade, other issues like immigration. And we answer the poll and decide what we want to do. The grassroots does. You. If there's an issue on the poll and there's 3 choices, and the best choice is 46%, we don't do it. The national coordinators don't do it. Mark Meckler and Jenny Beth don't say anything on Fox Business Channel, or on Fox News, or on CNN. If it's a clear majority of the 3,500 plus groups around the country, that bubbles up to the top and it's addressed nationally. So we're not a top-down movement, we're a bottom-up movement. If the 3,500 people that represent those Tea Parties coast to coast are on that call, and generally it's average Monday night is probably maybe 200 or 300 out of all of them. Some can make it every week, some can't. Those people decide what to do. You. Not the people who happen to run the organization because they started it back in 2009. So just to give you a flavor, that's how it works. The reason the Tea Party movement exists is precisely because of the decades-long status quo and the intransigence of the elitists inside the Beltway who defend it. Simply put, once again, there are 2 sides. And for those of you who read Mark Levin's book, Liberty and Tyranny, you know what I'm talking about. There's a side of tyranny, those who favor that form, the rule of the few over the many. And there are those who favor liberty, the many who treasure their freedoms and seek to restore the Constitution and the limits it places on government. In other words, there are those who disdain the Constitution, like the current occupant of the White House who tries to find ways around it. And there are those of us who revere it, who want to see it back in its place of honor as the sole controlling document of our country. Ronald Reagan warned us of our present crisis, created by an overwhelmingly large, powerfully centralized federal government. And now we have it. $14.5 trillion in debt and rising, US debt owned by foreign powers, socialism taught as acceptable, bankrupt entitlements, weakened states' rights, weakened military, executive power overshadowing the voice of the people, judicial legislation, centralized federal power, violations of the Constitution by Congress, and you can see this every day if you watch the news, morality abandoned, American resources squandered, illegal immigration encouraged, constitutional freedoms diminished, law by regulation strangling the economy. As Jim Wallace can tell you, the businesses he started, the biggest problem we have is an average of 10 regulations a day coming out of Washington, D.C. That's why companies move offshore. If you're General Motors, you can build a Buick Century in Beijing $20,000 cheaper than you can build it over here. Because you don't have side impact standards. You don't have the EPA sniffing the tailpipe. You don't have airbags. You don't have all the sensors required and all the electronics on the engine. It's not just the UAW and their pension and benefits that add $6,500 to $7,000 the cost of the vehicle. It's the $10,000 to $11,000 your federal government adds the cost. So next time you're looking at a $45,000 pickup truck, you know what went into it. Reagan's writings and speeches reveal the course corrections necessary to improve on our Republican form of government and preserve it. Unfortunately, none of these are being done. He understood that the citizens needed to be armed with knowledge, like our founders did. And Reagan asked, in a speech he gave, if not us, who? And if not now, when? Well, the Tea Party movement is the who, and the time is now.